In this episode of Throwback Thursday, Thomas Henley shares with me his line of thinking when he's in places that are unfamiliar with him, as well as his experience with being in tournament fighting in Taekwondo. Listen and enjoy. From Thailand after a few years of being over there. How soon then do you turn into an advocate for autism?
Yeah, I think around that time, a little bit before I went to Thailand, I came across different communities online. I was watching some YouTube videos of different autistic people. It was very much in its infancy in terms of content, but I also found the Instagram communities online. So I started actually. It's very strange because people kind of assume that when you diagnose that you know everything about what the diagnosis is, but the difficult thing about autism is that it's very, very undereducated, even in professionals. So there's a lot of elements to being autistic that are not explored. I thought it was just socializing and I thought it was just sensory issues, but it's so much more than that. There's so much more nuance to it. And I think that kind of inspired me a little bit. I was feeling very isolated away from home. I didn't really have a friend group. I didn't, I at school you kind of presented with people, whereas when you're an adult, you have to go out and find people and develop friendships. And so that was kind of an ignition for me starting my journey. And one of the first videos that I made was, saying that I'm going to improve myself. And if you want, you can come along with me. And so I created loads of videos. I got involved on Instagram. It's only recently that I started to put a lot more focus and a lot more energy into growing my platform as a business. But it was
Well,
all around very transformative for me.
now share with me your experience with the NDTI, the National Development Team of Inclusion.
It's it's a big sort of inclusion charity in the UK. Where they do a lot of projects with the government. I did a project where I led on some autism and sensory awareness training for the hospital staff at this big hospital, big children's hospital called Al Dahay. We also made some documents around how they can improve their sensory inclusivity for autistic children. Because if you don't know, the hospitals are not the best place. Dentists, hospitals, hairdressers tend to be really bad trigger points for a lot of autistic people just because of the sensory mess that they present, and that presents a really big problem for healthcare. So we focused on that, but I've also been involved in different speaking. I did a presentation for the government around understanding autism. It was kind of a sector that's responsible for like benefits and independence payments. So I had a bit of an impact with them. And I've also, I've done a lot of different projects, and at the moment we're working on this internships work, which is hoping to double the amount of work placements for autistic people in the UK, which is great. I'm doing like the media.
I want to slide back here for a second because you mentioned something that was interesting. When you go to the education arena and over into Thailand, there's groups of people for waiting for you to mingle, as opposed to now that time of life's over, your work is done there, your studies, and you get on and now you're out. What are some of the issues or anxieties that you experience when you have to go and present yourself like to strangers or an environment you're not familiar with?
I think it's very dependent on my mental state. Like I don't see any downsides to being autistic in myself other than the experiences that I had in secondary school, which were the ignition to my mental health conditions. So a lot of it is very dependent on my mental state at the moment. So it's here and there. I
tying
go
in
through
with
fluctuations.
now, what's interesting is tying in here is one of your current hobbies that you liked is bodybuilding.
Yeah,
And I think your Taekwondo background and your bodybuilding has kind of cultivated a different man. So share with me that experience, and then let's begin to talk about your podcast.
sure. So taekwondo is something that I picked up um in secondary school, in high school, or middle school. I don't know. um, and that was because growing up as an autistic person, you don't necessarily have the role models that other people have. There's hardly anybody in the well, hardly was anybody sort of out and about talking about being autistic and someone to look up to. So what I looked up to was Japanese anime, like Dragon Ball Z or all the fighting animations. So I said to myself, I want to be like that. I want to be strong. I want to be able to stand up for myself against the bullies. So I started that. I started for about 2 years of training traditionally. And then I got headhunted by a sports taekwondo organization, got beat up a lot. Eventually got to a place where I went to the national championships. Over time, I grew my skills, and I got a gold medal at the British Championships in
Oh wow.
the heavyweight category.
I'd say you were pretty good. You just, you kind of did
Yeah,
it as a
well,
hobby.
it's I went to the Commonwealth Championships as well, which it was the first sort of Commonwealth themed event in Taekwondo history. So it was a big thing,
Now,
and I won
did
the
they you're competing with other wrestler or other fighters? Is that did they create a class for you, or you just get to compete in the open class? It doesn't
no, I just
matter.
competed open class.
Oh, that's
Um,
really cool. That's
they
that I
actually
like that.
merged the categories at the Commonwealth Championships. So I was fighting this absolutely gigantic, like 6'6", massive dude. It was one of the closest fights that I've ever had. It was won by like a split hair, um, and I got an award actually at the end of the games for best male fighter.
Let me ask you a
So
question. Now, how much does your autism and your ability to focus on really on another level help you with that in those moments? You say you just beat them by a hair, but you're aware of that hair. So share with me how you feel like that played to your advantage.
I think it's I think, to be honest, the most advantage that I've seen with me being autistic and a fighter is that I am so involved in routine. Like, whereas a lot of fighters, they'll kind of have off days and they won't show up to training. I'll be there every time. I also had I have a weird sensory profile where I find sharp pain really difficult, but I also have quite an insensitivity to blunt pain. So that helped a lot fighting. Um, and also I didn't tend to make a lot of eye contact with people, so it was very difficult for them to know what I was doing, know
Oh,
what I was going to, where I was going to throw my kicks or that kind of thing. Um, and I think it's just you see, the funny thing is that probably about 1/3 of the time before competitions, I'd have a panic attack or I'd have a meltdown.
oh,
Um, but I never didn't fight. I never withdrew. I never stopped during the fight. Um, so I guess for me it was kind of an embodiment of like my willingness to go on with Taekwondo. Like so much in my heart, I felt if I was going to give up any fight, then I would just be done, and that'll be it, and
mm,
it'll just be a cascade. So
wow.
whenever I fought, whenever I did anything like that, it was less about winning, and it was more about showing to myself that I'm capable of fighting. So it was kind of And I took it very far. I mean, I competed for
Yeah, you
GB
did.
at
You
like
did excellent.
number of events, including the under-21 European Championships, which
Wow.
I did. I went furthest out of all of the GB cohort, which was
Wow.
amazing for me.
Well,
It was
you
in
actually
Romania.
had quite a career going to now. What a great episode. If you want to listen to the full episode, I have a link at the end of the video so you can hear the whole thing. Thomas talks more about his podcast and some of the things he's currently doing. I thought that was amazing listening to how he described where his mind went during the fighting, as well as his acute levels of pain, and the threshold was a big motivator. I want to share with you the story behind Leave Your Mark podcast. It was my journey with cancer that made me write my book, Bad Days Are Really Good Days in Disguise. And it was really through that experience of 6-year battle with cancer that I decided to do a few things differently in my life. And I share this with you in the podcast by the stories as well as the guests. I hope you enjoy this book. It gives you a deeper insight at what I'm up to. Thanks and be blessed.